just wait a couple more minutes and see if a few more people join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start. Welcome to this webinar on energy efficiency opportunities and utility programs for oil and gas production. My name is Neil Colway. I work for the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, or SWEEP. I'd like to start by saying a few words about logistics, and then we'll go ahead and get started. There's about 20 of us, 20 attendees, along with the 3 speakers, and you're all muted for now, and will stay muted during the presentations. And then after the last presentation, we will have a discussion. And if you have a comment or a question, we'd like you to raise your hand, which you can do. If you look in the control panel, there's a little icon with a hand, and you can raise your hand, and we will then unmute you individually and you can speak. Or your other option is you can type in a question at any time, and we will address your questions during the discussion. So now I'd like to introduce the topic for today. And I'd like to start by thanking the Colorado Energy Office. The Colorado Energy Office contracted with SWEEP to look into energy efficiency and electrification opportunities in oil and gas production, and explore what Colorado utilities are doing and what they could be doing to promote these opportunities, and also to explore state and local government policies that affect methane emissions and electrification technologies. So this webinar is part of that project. Why can't I advance my slide? Help. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay. Here's an overview of today's presentations. First, I will speak briefly about the survey that we did. I called most of the Colorado utility reps, and we spoke about a few questions, and I will discuss that. And then Adam Sullivan of ClearResult will speak about utility energy efficiency programs, why they make sense for the utility, how to design a good program. And then we have Matt Charney of ClearResult, who will speak about some successes and example projects from ClearResult's work with Xcel Energy in New Mexico. Here's a quick look at oil and gas production in Colorado. Most of the production of both oil and gas is in Weld County and the neighboring counties of Adams and Arapahoe. So those are the biggest areas. And then we have Garfield, Rio Blanco, and Mesa counties over here. And they're part of what's called the Pisceans Basin. Weld County and Adams and Arapahoe are part of the Denver Basin. And the two other main areas are around La Plata County down here and Los Animas County in southern Colorado. So my computer's frozen again. Sorry about that. It won't let me advance the slide, and I can't get out. Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking, and hopefully my computer will stop freezing. We surveyed the. Kirsten is opening up the PowerPoint. We surveyed the utilities in these counties, and we asked them 3 questions, basically. We asked, are most of the oil and gas operations in your territories already connected to the grid? And we asked if you have energy efficiency incentive programs, and if you have you had any success with those? And then finally, we also asked, do you offer any incentives for electric equipment, such as electric compressors? So first of all, with regard to being connected to the grid, it's like the 4th slide. Next slide after that. All 8 of the utilities surveyed said most of their oil and gas customers were already grid connected. If you could go to the next slide. And yeah, and that's interesting because there was also a survey done for the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, CDPHE, in 2019 that found that only 20% of production sites in Colorado are connected to the grid. They surveyed 4,300 production sites in the Denver Basin and 1,200 sites in the Pisceans Basin. And so we can discuss this discrepancy later on, maybe in the discussion period. That's interesting discrepancy. So next slide. Here's a summary of the incentive programs being offered. And Xcel Energy also has a strategic energy management program. And Xcel has had 1 or 2 successful energy efficiency projects in Colorado, and none of the co-ops mentioned any successful projects in their territories so far. Next slide. We also asked if anybody was offering any incentives for electric compressors, and a couple of utilities mentioned some interest in this, but no success so far, and no specific incentives are being offered. Can you go to the next slide? There we go. And there's some advantages to electric compressors, such as they reduce on-site air emissions, and they reduce net greenhouse gas emissions, meaning less net CO2. But the economics are challenging, and we can discuss this more at the end if you like. And it's also discussed in this report. If you go to the next slide, we produced a report summarizing the energy efficiency and electrification best practices and utility programs. And it does go into more detail about the economics and pros and cons of electric compressors. So I think I sent this report to all of you who are registered, and if I didn't, it's also available on SWEEP's website. And if you can't find it, just let me know, and I'd be happy to send you the link directly. So now I will turn it over to Adam.
All right. Thank you.
Let's see.
Find my screen here.
Let's see. Kirsten, you want to make Adam the presenter? I don't see his name in my choices there. There you go. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So good morning. Adam Sullivan. I'm with ClearResult. Been with ClearResult for about 2 years doing program design in industrial markets, focused solely on energy efficiency. Before that, I was with Pacific Gas and Electric Company in California, and did some consulting on the side in oil fields as well. So my oil experience is mostly focused around kind of finding opportunities and kind of convincing people that those are good ideas, and now building programs around that. So the project development all the way through sales, and some technical review in a previous life. So what we're going to go through is kind of the when, where, and how of programming for oil and gas customers. I'm focusing primarily on oil exploration and not refining, but most of the same concepts work. Why do we do it? So obviously there are environmental benefits around reducing energy consumption in oil fields. Some of them directly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, like reducing flaring, that sort of thing. And then there's also some water benefits with reducing energy usage. There's an economic benefit that's obvious, right? Most of these programs are based around buying down the incremental cost of more efficient equipment, or just paying for the reduction in energy usage. That makes businesses more profitable. Everybody wins. And then the utility side, reducing overall system demand reduces need to invest in additional generation. This whole thing is here because it's cheaper to save a watt than generate one. Yeah, so that's the win-win scenario here. There are a bunch of other benefits that we don't generally capture: operational benefits, kind of labor, staffing, all that stuff comes into play here, but not so much as a quantified metric. All right, move here. All right, I'm going to break it down kind of simple, and I want you to follow me and just trust it. This actually works. What I find, especially sending kind of newer engineers into the field, is there's this intimidation factor out working around oil and gas, right? You saw the picture of the compressor. These are huge equipment. Pumps, I've seen 1,000 horsepower, 2,500 horsepower compressors, whatever. It's intimidating to get in there and kind of be that expert and help someone who lives with this equipment day to day and is responsible for its operation, and tell them how to use it better. That's my boss. But let's break it down. Oil fields are basically water processing systems. It changes from where you are. Most of my experiences in California, where we're seeing 95 to 99% water cut rates. In Wyoming, we saw a little bit better, but it's still pretty darn high. What you're doing is pulling water out of the ground and putting it back in and cleaning it, right? And then we sell, obviously, the byproduct of that. So that's a stretch. I wouldn't put that in front of a customer, but to kind of ease your mind technically, that's all we're doing. Pulling water out of the ground, we're putting it back in, and we scrape some oil off the top. The sorry, child. Number two, field operators, they don't live in our world. Most of them have goals around being cost effective and reducing their costs, but their number one goal is to produce oil. So this will come up in some of the platforms we use to sell energy efficiency, but a lot of these guys are struggling to kind of meet that and don't have the tools to measure it, don't have the tools to control it, don't have the tools. I mean, they need to move oil, right? They need to get it out of the ground and move it. Reducing costs is secondary, but they're on the hook for it as well. So a lot of times if you're in an audit and you're deep and you're kind of in that afternoon where you've built the trust and you're talking as friends and walking through equipment, at this point, you kind of get pulled aside and like, hey, I don't know what to do about this. You're like, yeah, and that's why we're here, right? So we can make this, we can help translate how their operation works. Anecdotally, this even goes to kind of the billing side of things and not energy efficiency. I had a customer who would switch from one compressor to another, but let the second compressor warm up while the other one was operating and doubled their demand, right? We kind of talked through that and explained how it worked, and they figured out that they could do one at a time and not need to run both compressors at the same time, setting that demand for the month or whatever billing period it was. Oil fields change, reservoirs change, everything changes. And as that happens, operations change with it, but frequently they don't change in the most effective manner. So this is probably 90% of what you're going to find as far as energy efficiency, the big energy efficiency opportunities is we have a battery that's been running at X load forever, and now we're changing. We built another battery up on the north side, and we're running both of them at half speed. Or we're that evolution is usually where we're going to say, hey, what if we ran a little bit extra pipe or a little bigger pipe or a little something, centralize this, use this equipment, as the because all the equipment's designed to handle a bigger load. So that's where it comes from. It's that they're chasing the oil, and if we step back and look at it kind of from a technical standpoint, there will be opportunities following that. And then just to break it down to its most simple is you're going on site into someone's place of business, and you're telling them how to run their equipment. So trust is going to be that just kind of number one. Before I can create a program that's innovative and saves energy and does all the regulatory bells and whistles, I need to have this customer's trust, and that's gained by being there, shaking hands. I mean, post-COVID, that's how these projects move. I do see a question. Are we taking questions on the fly?
Just hold it until the end.
Okay, great. Okay, so how do we get the savings out of these places? So I'm going to talk prescriptive, deemed. We're all familiar with these. You rip the box top off, send it in, we send you a rebate. What I want you to think about as we go through these different platforms is the kind of evolution of a customer and their growth in energy management maturity, right? So we start customers off with these deemed rebates, the prescriptive stuff. It's very easy to understand. I buy a widget, you send me money for it. No big deal. There's also a technological progression where a single technology, let's take pump off controllers, can move almost backwards through these. So pump off controllers we saw start as an emerging technology where we're doing lots of measurement and kind of scientific studies and that sort of thing. And then that moves into a custom or a calculated incentive, right? So we understand the technology, we believe that it saves energy. We're still going to measure and do calculations on a kind of one-on-one situation for every one of these units we see. And then once we gain trust in that technology, all of a sudden, okay, it's $30 per horsepower, and we just pump out that rebate until we say the market is absolutely saturated and this is no longer cutting edge energy saving technique. The same thing customers go through. So we start them off with the swap a light bulb, and then we move into, well, if we measure this, if we calculate this incentive, we see that the savings are X or Y. All the way through, I'd say the next step is retrocommissioning, where you've been operating this equipment in this way for so long, but it was designed to be operated in this other way, and we can get it back to that initial operating efficiency. Or another way, we can kind of operationally change the equipment so that it works in a better way, whatever that happens to be. That could be the overall speed of the system, the set point, the whatever. It's getting more and more complex and technical, all the way until kind of we're introducing the Strategic Energy Management Platform, or SEM. It's got a million other names. That's what we've been calling it. And now we're really trying to intertwine energy management with day-to-day business operations. It's operationalizing energy management, where we're going to get kind of the highest buy-in, the support. We want kind of someone responsible for that energy usage and those metrics that are coming out of that, with serious support, so that these don't kind of, yeah, that's a great report, thanks for all the pretty charts, and gathers dust on the table. We're going to do a lot of training around how to measure, how to manage energy, and really kind of build in the tools so this customer can take this and move forward with energy management on their own. And finally, in our current situation right now, price of oil has dropped, right? So how do you move an energy efficiency project around the price of oil? And what I've found, I'm sure most of you can agree with this, is if the price is too high, then nobody cares. It's about production. It's about moving as much oil as they can, and we don't have time to slow down and do project X, Y, and Z. If the price of oil is too low, then there's a capital problem, and there's not enough capital to invest in all the projects that we've been working on forever. It's right in that sweet spot in the middle, and it's not really a small sweet spot. It's pretty good, because on both ends of that, it's price of oil is dropping, and okay, we need to get hold of our costs. So energy is a major cost, right? Energy and labor, that's it. So as the price of oil is dropping, that's becoming the issue, and then we can come in and offer kind of all the, here's maybe the retrocommissioning fits in really well here, because they're typically lower investment measures with high energy savings. And then on the other end of that, as the price of oil is increasing, it unlocks more capital to do some of the bigger projects. So that's how that goes. But overall, programming in oil and gas it's fairly straightforward and simple. It can be very intimidating, and that's why kind of you think about this as just water, right? We're pulling water out of the well by whatever technology that is. We're going to talk some more about measures later, whether it's a rod beam or an ESP or whatever it's getting it out. Now we have to take the oil off the top and deal with disposing of that water, whether it's high pressure injection or just a disposal site, cleaning. It's just about moving water. In California, we actually have kind of steam injection. This is more of that. You're seeing more CO2 injection, I think, kind of in the outside of California. But all of this it's about managing that reservoir, which is about water with oil on the top. So that's the last of my slide, and I'm going to hand it off.
Good morning. yesterday when I could share my screen over any problems, but today. There you go. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. We'll, so forward. So I'm the Mediterranean. I'm the program manager for the Xcel Energy New Mexico program. Luckily, Xcel had at the last downturn saw the potential for growth in the Permian Basin at Southeast New Mexico and had started working in electrifying that oil field as they were anticipating the growth. So again, to Adam's point of building trust, that's really what we were trying to do, was look at how we can get in with the oil and gas companies. And I think one of the challenges is that in new growth, they were starting to make their plans back in 2017. And I think really now it's 2020, we're starting to see a lot of that actually finish the installations and start the processing of it. So we'll talk a little bit to those measures. But again, we took the approach with Xcel of, how can we utilize our existing experience and expertise from California and other places and really get in with the producers and do that. And again, the Xcel program has an under 200 horsepower prescriptive program and an over 200 horsepower custom program. We also do the pump off controllers and a lot of the other conversions, process optimization, pipeline projects, looking at water that can be shut off, and then just general optimization and pump placements. So starting in 2017, right, we really were out there with the customers, building up these programs. Again, the drive incentive has really become the main driver of our program with the growth out there. Custom is $400 per kW, and prescriptive, right, has the deem savings and deem prescriptive amounts that are out there. So again, kind of working with our key account managers, right, we really developed the buy-in of getting the customers out there and getting them to understand what energy efficiency projects they may have coming in and what they could do going forward. Again, New Mexico was lucky in that it was a lot of new growth in the last few years. But again, and I think the key of kind of what Adam said, the guy on the ground in the field doesn't really have a feel for the overall energy efficiency program. The designers, while they're designing the most energy efficiency ones, when it actually gets put in, there's variables from the original design to what actually happens. So you really have to develop a network between the design team, and the electric team and the actual field operators for when it's finally up and running. Each company seems to kind of have their own model of how they're either set up and how they're going to operate. They've all kind of designed systems that work for them. The good thing is that they repeat those systems pretty much over and over, time to time. So that helps everything. Once you understand what they're doing, they're just repeating the process. And then again, setting up the field visits with the right field techs and production people, and then you've got to work with their IT team. I think most of them now with the VFDs, are opening up the SCADA that they collect, which eventually will make things easier as far as the custom projects go. And then really one of the key things for the Xcel Energy program is they've got joint energy efficiency plans. So this is where we can go in and work with the customer and understand, where are they going to be in 5 years? What projects are they going to be looking at? And again, this helps with our evaluators and helps us see what projects are in their pipeline. And again, it allows us to go in and work with the customer on really developing a strategy around energy efficiency to make sure it's, you know, front and center of it versus kind of walking in and just finding out what have they done. We're really looking forward as to what are they going to do, what can we do. We also went out and really focused on a lot of the trade allies, making sure they, you know, are participating and understanding what's going on. We work with them on, you know, what information to include on quotes and invoicing, and, you know, to try and make the program as efficient as possible. And just as an example of, you know, who we're out there with, obviously Oxy, XTO, and Chevron are kind of the big three out there, but there's another 20 to 30 producers out there that we've all had contact with and have worked within the energy efficiency program or are preparing to work within the energy efficiency program. Obviously the producers pull it out, but they've got to do something, especially with the gas that's out there. So a lot of midstream and pipeline companies, we're seeing a lot of opportunities within those places as well. And then again, with the vendors, even to the point where some of the vendors have created logins for us with the producers and midstream companies' permission for us to go in and pull the data, which again allows us, you know, the field operation guys are so focused on, let me get the oil out of the ground. You know, this allows the energy efficiency teams to go out there and really look at pulling the numbers and getting the data and going from there. Just an example of how it's grown and the success we've had. Again, you know, the first year we did 4 gigawatts, and then in 2018 we did 9. 2019 we were up to 11. We're only through Q1 of this year, and we're almost at 5 gigawatts. So to date, we've got 22 customers who've received rebates. I think we have over 30 customers who actually have projects in the pipeline or have received rebates. And then we've got, you know, we've closed 135 projects. So I think there's over 490 prescriptive drives. So those are the ones that are under 200 horsepower. And so far we've closed projects on 6 custom drives. Again, this takes a little more engineering, quite a bit more analysis. I think it's a challenge to get the energy efficiency evaluators to understand what's going on in the oil field. The good news is that a lot of people are repeating their projects, so we're starting to develop calculators on how to do these things and make it a more repeatable process for it. So just some examples of what we've closed. You know, in New Mexico, vapor recovery units. So this is capturing the methane. I'm not saying there's no burn off, but there's a specific push in New Mexico to reduce the methane. So despite the growth, methane has actually gone down in New Mexico. And that's kind of the push for these vapor recovery units. And they'll range anywhere from 5 horsepower. Actually, we received some this week that are 200 horsepower. So, you know, they are units that, again, are really prescriptive, but we've got, it makes them easy to process, but they're putting these all over the fields in multiple places. And then the fluid pumps. So, you know, the central tank batteries and the saltwater disposals, they'll have anywhere from a few 25 horsepower to 50, 60, 70 horsepower that's kind of moving the fluid, all the way up to 200 horsepower ones that are, you know, really pushing it out into the pipelines or into the next production site. So again, this has been, you know, this is the kind of low-hanging fruit, you know, and what we're seeing is folks are able to install those and get pretty quick rebates on them while we work on the custom side of it. You know, an example is one customer put in 10 new central tank batteries in 2019. Again, the nice thing is they're basically cookie cutter, right? Each site had 250, 175, and 3 7.5 horsepower. So for each site, we were able to put together about a $29,000 rebate per site. Again, we're able to go out and spend a day in the field and visit at least 5 of the sites. New Mexico's a lot of territory between sites, but within a couple of days, we can generate some pretty good savings and rebate opportunities out there. Okay, the custom side's definitely a little more challenging, just in that we've got to do the analysis for it. We're seeing a lot of ESPs, so this is the electric submersible pumps, either being installed at the beginning or a lot of conversions going on where they're going from the jet pumps and the rod pumps to these ESPs. Because they're multi-stage, we've got to do a custom project for it. But we're seeing generally about an 84 kW per ESP savings out there, so about 33,000 per ESP. I think one of the smaller customers did 4 of these in 2018, but I think one of the larger customers we've put together. I think they've got about 25 that they installed in 2019, and they were planning on putting in another 20 or so this year. So we'll see where they take those projects. But again, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there with how they're electrifying the oil field when they have the opportunity to. The saltwater disposal systems, again, these are injection pumps. Again, we're seeing anywhere from 300 to 600 horsepower injection pumps. This was just on a 350 horsepower one where we've got about 95 kW saved on that. So that's about a 38,000 one. But again, while we only have closed one so far, we have about 50 saltwater disposal projects in the pipeline that we'll do analysis on over the next couple of years. So again, I think the producers have plenty of opportunities, and they're looking at how they can make their projects as energy efficiency as possible, and how they can take advantage of the rebate programs that are out there as well. And again, where they are doing, where they have done jet pumps or rod pumps, they're also looking at how they can do the conversions to those as well. There is some new technology. I know there was quite a bit of motor push. I didn't put this in here, but we are starting to see what's called a permanent magnetic motor that's going in, that they now reduces not only with the VFD, but the motor itself is more efficient than like a NEMA premium motor would be. So continues to be new technology out there that I think the producers will continue to take advantage of as the price of those motors comes down. Then the midstream, the pipelines, and we could include the refinery in here as well. Again, they are all as well using vapor recovery units and fluid pumps. I think these are typically the larger plants where you see pipes kind of going all over the place. If you walk the plant, they've got VFDs on nearly every pump and motor that they've got in there. So a midstream that was completed in 2018. Again, we found 650 horsepower, 540 horsepower, and 1830 horsepower. So about $100,000 just in prescriptive rebates. Again, their compressors. This is just the one we've closed so far. An acid gas compressor of 1650 horsepower, almost 160 kW savings. So a rebate of 63,000 on that. We have several other of these gas compressors that are in our pipeline that are anywhere from 1200 up to 2500 horsepower. Again, each of these plants has multiple ones of these, and the refineries have several as well. There's one of the what will eventually be hopefully one of the largest midstreams in the world is in development, and they've got a 8500 horsepower compressor that's going into that one, and if they get to build the second one, there's actually a 16,000 horsepower compressor out there. So, I think the companies are looking at how they can, really maximize these plants when they've got them up and running. So good, just some examples and opportunities that are out there within the oil field. I know everything's certainly depressed right now, similar to what it was in 2014 and 15, but hopefully we see a similar growth coming down the line as well. So I guess, Neil, we can open it up to questions and discussion.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. We do have one question. What is the total cost of a VSD for a 200 horsepower project? I guess that's for you, Matt, maybe.
Yeah, I think we've seen them range. I think the VFD itself can be anywhere from about, I think I've seen them as low as 17 or 18,000 up to about 30 to 35,000. It's pretty dependent on what type of motor they're running and what they're trying to accomplish with that.
Okay. And does your rebates cover up to a certain percentage of the total cost, or how does that work?
Yeah, for New Mexico, it can be up to, well, obviously it's the most it can be is 60% of the project cost. So, but it's typically our payback is about on custom projects. Typical payback is 2 to 10 years.
Great. Okay, I have one more question, and then we did have one question prepared in advance, but I wondered if Adam or Matt, if you could say something about what do you think is a difference between New Mexico and Colorado, and what opportunities would you expect to find in Colorado?
I'm not familiar with those areas and the geology that you're dealing with. I can speak to kind of geographic differences in general, and it's all going to be about kind of how long we've been pulling oil out of the ground and how much more effort we're putting in. So if you start with your old rod beam and just there's oil gushing and very little water, that same reservoir will kind of move into maybe a water injection or a steam injection or CO2 injection, and all of this kind of comes with its own complexities and opportunities. As soon as you leave that simple rod beam, you start getting more opportunities on pumping and VFDs, compressors maybe. Steam injection, obviously now you're running massive boilers, so you get kind of all the combustion opportunities, all the insulation and general kind of opportunities that come with steam. CO2 again is compression and pumping. So it just depends on what's going on in the reservoir and the maturity of the oil field.
Yeah, I think Colorado's more mature and more natural gas focused than New Mexico is. Obviously, New Mexico, really the growth has been, over the last few years has been all new projects. But I think that, in some of our customers do have things going on in Colorado, and they've discussed, are there similar opportunities in Colorado? I think we've said that there are some, but that, yeah, it's got to be on, are they going to look more at the optimization of it? Where can they put a VFD in where maybe they don't have one that they haven't had previously? So it's definitely a more mature one as of now. I don't think they're doing as much new construction up there.
So like you were saying, Adam, if it's more mature and there's less new construction, maybe it's an opportunity for more of the recommissioning type measures. Do you think that's a good target?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to get into overall pumping efficiency. I mean, even in an existing plant where the battery's been there forever, that you're going to have the kind of add-on equipment like VFDs and kind of tighter controls. That sort of opportunity is going to be there. It's really a individual scenario at that point.
Great. I have one more question, and then I see one more, which we'll get to in a second from the participants. I guess this is Matt, more for you. Of the successful projects that you described in New Mexico, what percentage would you say are new construction versus retrofits?
In New Mexico right now, it's really probably 95% is new construction. Just because there have been so many of them, and at this point, it's kind of low hanging fruit, right? It's we know it's going in, we know how to go out and get it and go from there. Again, I think we're seeing, some of the smaller producers went to ESPs when they could, just because of like Adam said, it was a perfect storm of medium oil prices and a chance to invest and improve their fields from an energy efficiency perspective, as well as a production perspective. So that certainly helped us out. I think that the looking long term, we'll expect that to shift again back to some more retro commissioning and go from there. Like for us, that's probably 2 or 3 years down the line. But right now, it's all new construction.
And one more along those lines, you kind of both touched on this, but can you say something more about the challenge of getting a customer to go for the retrofit projects? I think it involves like a progression and getting them to trust more in the utility and in the contractor, and then maybe develop more of an appetite for energy efficiency. Or can you just maybe say something about that?
Sure, I'll take that. So there are always kind of two clients on every energy efficiency sale, right? There's a guy with his hands on the machine, and then there's the guy with his hands on the budget. So you have to please both of them, right? So either we're offering kind of additional control capabilities, a simpler and more reliable control. A lot of your variable frequency drives do just that. And there's also a financial kind of, the financial equation is very important in making these things happen. So we have to show a simple payback. We have to show that it's better than whatever rate, their typical rate of return is, and that it fits with whatever portfolio of projects they have coming down the pike. A lot of times that is a major barrier in that they've got kind of a 5-year plan on the work that's being done, and they don't have time to shut down or squeeze it into a shutdown. But if the numbers work out and the technology is right, that's when you make a project.
Great. Well, let's come back to this question here and the discrepancy that I pointed out. And I want to see if anybody wants to comment on this. So I mentioned that there's a little discrepancy between asking you guys, the utility reps, do you think most of the production sites are connected? And most of you saying yes, they are. And the CDPHE survey saying, well, they found only 20% of them are actually connected. So I don't know what that discrepancy is about, but my question is, do you think that maybe as things start to recover, are there more opportunities to explore, and are you going to think about gearing up to try to get more sites connected? Does anybody want to comment on that? I'm looking to see if there are any hands raised. Let's see. Dylan, do you want to, wait, no, Dylan had his hand up, but do you want to say anything more about that?
Sure. I was just kind of interested in that discrepancy, but I wonder if potentially that could come from just interviewing the utility account managers. They're only really aware of the sites that are already in their territory or they're already serving power to, and they don't have a good grasp on the number of sites that are not grid connected.
Mhm.
That could, be one thing I was wondering. I also wonder if there's any sort of some of those non-grid connected sites, if they're likely to be older, maybe less active and less operation going on in those sites as well. Just some of my thoughts there.
Uh-huh. It's possible. Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on this question or anything else? Uh-huh.
I think we all have the same kind of biased experience there in that obviously utility run energy efficiency programs are dealing with grid connected and savings that will impact the grid. So I personally have not seen a lot of off-grid systems. I don't know if that's just where I'm being taken out in the field, but yeah, typically we do see a lot of cogen. We lot of see things that make it more complicated, but not purely off-grid. And that's complicated in just that we can't obviously pay for energy savings from energy that hasn't been generated by the utility.
Right. Matt, did you want to say something?
Sure, and it's along the same lines. I think there's 2 parts to it. One, determining why there's a discrepancy between the amount of grid connected sites and the thought that everything is grid connected, and then identifying the areas of where we can convince these non-connected sites to become connected in an efficient manner. From our utilities perspective, we would definitely be interested in figuring out how we go down that path. I don't know the method that we would use yet, but I would say yes, there's definitely opportunities, and we would work towards those once we start to recover here.
Yeah, great. Well, and most of the people that I spoke with said they were interested in doing that, and they mentioned, well, several utilities mentioned there were a few areas that they were working to try to get connected. So just trying to prod things in that direction. But any other questions about any of this?
There's a demand response question. Have VFVs been leveraged for demand response programs, or would this be too disruptive to production? In my experience, yes, that's absolutely possible, but it quickly evolves into a kind of billing management strategy, where if it works today, or we can avoid peak pricing, probably works tomorrow too, right? So as a way of controlling rates, you start to see shifting off of, shifting to play that time of use curve and pricing associated with it. So yes, absolutely, but typically demand response programs are not sweet enough to make that happen.
Let's see. Well, we have 5 minutes to go. I want to pick on Steve, if you're still there. Do you want to say something about, do you think there's a potential for more SEM in this industry? And what do you think about that? You're unmuted. You can speak if you want.
Can you hear me? I don't know how this thing works.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, hello. Thank you. Um, I'm not sure what to say in addition to this. I think it was a really good presentation. We at Xcel Energy definitely want more participation in our SEM program, and for that matter, in all of our end use programs among the oil and gas customers. So we're very welcoming of this. I think in Colorado, I'll say an area that I'm open to suggestions about is getting customer attention for that spot where significant customer operations are in the one utility's operating territory. Just for background there, Xcel Energy in Colorado has kind of a gerrymandered, if you will, service territory where we have a little bit of oil and gas operations that tend to be kind of on the periphery of the oil and gas total operations. And so we actually do see significant portions of our customers' operations that are outside of our territory and in somebody else's territory, or are not yet served by the grid. So we do see that, especially in Western Colorado. And so those are, that's just kind of restating some of the issues I heard already. But we're open for business and open for suggestions about how to kind of overcome those issues, more customers to the grid, or maybe even partnering with other utilities to just approach the customers jointly, right? To say, Xcel can help you only in Xcel's territory, but somebody can help you throughout all of your grid connected operations. And maybe if we approach the customers jointly, we can get more of their attention for better enrollment.
Great. That's an interesting suggestion.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that in California, where you've got kind of overlapping utilities between PG&E and Southern California Edison, where one field could share both and be served from either end. And in that situation, yeah, partnering with the other utility works very well. I'd say outside of that, 90% of the kind of conversations that kick off the energy efficiency relationship are about service, whether that's reliability or pricing on rates, just other options. That's usually what gets that account manager in the door. And then we open the conversation up to energy efficiency, demand response, whatever it happens to be.
Interesting. Okay, well, not seeing any other questions, maybe that's a good note to end on. And I want to mention that the recording will be available, and we will send you a link in a follow-up email. And I want to thank our speakers today, Adam and Matt, for doing a great job. And sorry for the little glitch at the beginning. And thank Kirsten. I want to thank Kirsten for helping get us through this. And thank you all for attending. And look at the report if you are interested. And have a great day. And thank you again for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. And thanks, guys.